I was gonna kind of dive right in. With Isaiah 55, verses 1 through 13, the first part of it really stuck out to me, where God was basically saying, like, if you have no money, like, come buy bread. If you have no water, like, come and drink. Come and eat if you're hungry. And just very inviting, saying, like, come here, like, I'll feed you, I'll give you water, I will quench your thirst, I will be your source of income. And then it kind of turns and it's like, so why don't you have money? Why don't you have food? What have you been spending your money on? And for me, that just kind of makes me think of my mom. Or like if I ask my mom for money, I'll be like, hey, can I have like $20? I need to buy gas. And then she's like, yeah, you can have that, but what have you been spending your money on? And I have to be guilty, and I'll be like, oh, I went shopping. So it just kind of reminds me of that. So many times, God just reminds me of a parent, because that's what he is. He has to discipline us. So that's always what kind of comes out into my mind. Another thing that I absolutely love that, again, reminds me of my mother, in verse, next page, in verses it says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways. My mom quotes that all the time. That's verses, chapter 55, verse 8, and then verse 9, but my mom definitely uses that, not probably in the best of ways, but I think it's funny. So going with humans, a lot of times we think we know what's best. We're like, all right, I've been living my life. Me, for example, I will be like, I've lived my life on this earth for 20 years. I know what I'm doing. And so my mom will pull that out and be like, you know, you should do this, you should apply for this, blah, blah, blah. I don't really have any examples for that. But she's like, hey, I've been through this. I went to college. I've done all the, like, I've been 20 before. I could be 20 like 3 different times. I'm so old. She doesn't actually say that. I'm just bashing on my mom. Sorry, Mom. I love you. But she always says, like, I know what's best. I made you. I gave you life. I nurtured you. I love you. I will not tell you what's wrong. And God does the same thing. He's like, my ways are good. You are corrupted by evil, corrupted by sin, but I am still good. Listen to me and follow through to me. And then to kind of prove that, he's like, for the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. And it reminds me, it doesn't compare to this, but it reminds me of Job, when God and Job were talking, and Job is just like, yeah, but, like, why does this even happen? I can't remember the exact contents. And then God's like, were you there when I made the stars? Were you there when I created the whole earth and world, and gave breath and life to it? Were you even there? Do you even know what I can do? How dare you ask me that? But God's kind of like putting Job in his place and being like, look, I made the stars and the heavens and the earth. How can I not do this as well? And so that just kind of ties in with that. And then going kind of up, humans, so much. It says, seek the Lord and he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their ways, and the unrighteous their thoughts. For let them return to the Lord, for that he is here. This is both tying in humans and God in this perspective, where we are so wicked. We make our own ways. And so many times, like the prodigal son, again, a different book, but it's relating, it's the Bible, we so many times go and follow what we think is right, that's just temporary pleasure and things like that. And yet it says, let them return to the Lord, for he may have mercy on them. That is so wonderful. Wonderful news. Even in the Old Testament, I know so many people who think that there's 2 different gods, like one for the Old Testament, one for the New Testament, because the Old Testament God is not merciful. This shows that there was a covenant made, and God had to keep that covenant, but he was still merciful. So many times I just think, like, how can you not think that there's just one God of Old and New Testament? Sidetracked, but going to verses 12 to 13. For you shall go out in peace and led back in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall burst out into song, and all the trees shall clap their hands. I love that, because we're supposed to kind of praise God with creation and in creation. I know me personally, I probably said this before, but I experience God the most and probably just hear Him the best when I'm out in nature and when I am in His creation, like with other creations of His, animals, not people usually, keep that in mind. But it's just so wonderful that we have that, and then yet again we see that creation is crying out more than humans, because we have our wicked ways and the trees are still just singing, praising God. Wonderful. What I gathered for the life purpose is that God has a timing for everything. I don't think timing is probably the best word, but how God has everything and He's made everything to go in this order, to fulfill like a certain purpose, to do things. As an example, what I'm thinking of is verse 10, like when He talks about the rain and how the rain comes and the snow melts to water the earth, and it doesn't evaporate back up until it's done watering. And so He made it work to where it has a certain purpose, where it goes and it does its job, and then it comes back up to the heavens. And so I really like that. Going to Jeremiah, basically, like within these two texts, I kind of saw them related, but there's kind of some differences, so I'm just going to kind of go what I didn't say about Isaiah, talk about Jeremiah. Jeremiah was basically like, hey, you guys are doing things wrong, there's false prophets, and you're just going to be given to Nebuchadnezzar, and he's going to rule and reign because you guys deliberately disobeyed God. But God, like in Hebrew, the actual word instead of planning, I can't remember what it says, but it means to scheme. And so God's not planning like, oh, well, like when you're planning out your schedule, like we'll do this all nice and organized, but God's like scheming. He's making a scheme. He's like, all right, when you think of scheming, you kind of think of like the villain, like, oh, I'm going after evil. But God's like scheming. There has to be brokenness. There has to be this consequence since you guys did not obey me. So this is what has to happen in order for you to receive glory, in order for you guys to receive like the shalom, the peace, the wholeness of it all. One thing I really love, and it's evident in Isaiah, not Jeremiah, this is Jeremiah. It says, look for me and you will find me. Seek me out and I will be there. I love that because our God's not a God that hides from us. Our God's not a God that says, like, you have to do so much in order to be with me. But He's just saying, like, look for me and I will be there. Like, I want you to be a part of what I have. For humans, we're so defiant. All of the whole thing is just saying how we mess up, we're awful, we're defiant, and then God's like, hey, you guys kind of are messing things up, let's get on the right path, and I still love you. But one thing that we have is they had false prophets, and one of the things, it's not too important, but it stuck out to me, where it says, who are prophesying a lie to you in my name, I am going to deliver them in the hand of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, and they shall be killed before them in your eyes. One thing that really stuck out to me is how important names are, because God says, do not use my name in vain. And when the prophets, fake prophets, are saying like, hey, this is from the Lord, but God did not send them, God's like, that is not true. You are sending lies to them. You're using my name wrong. That's not what I've said. That is not anything to deal with me, and that's kind of like blasphemy. Also, another really important thing is like God names things, and one of key importance is to give somebody a name. And so I really like that. And a lot of times, like, there are name takers, and King Nebuchadnezzar takes their names. And so he's saying, like, I will be delivering you to them, and you will be stripped. Like, our names are identity. And he's like, you will no longer be my people because I will be stripped away from you, and you will not be mine. And that's how important it is that they don't get delivered to King Nebuchadnezzar. Also with creation, it's kind of like, what I've noticed from that was he compared it to the dying fig. Also, let me find it. It's kind of a small thing. Verse 18, it says, I will pursue them with the sword and famine, and with persistence, and I will make them a horror to all kingdoms of the earth, to be an object of cursing, horror, and hissing. I'm going to stop right there. It's really important that he says the hissing part, because when I think of hissing, I think of a snake. And so it's kind of like saying Satan's going to be in this, and it's not going to be part of me. And that's how bad, like, I won't be with him. And so I want to point that out. And then for life purpose is basically to search for the Lord, and you will find him. And we could see that in both Jeremiah and Isaiah. So yeah.